Hi, welcome to Hamilton and Hazen, Behind the Mic. Join author M.L. Hamilton and me, I'm narrator Kelly Hazen, as we discuss our latest audiobook. Born from more than a decade of award-winning collaboration and almost 100 audiobooks we've produced together, listen to the ins, the outs, the ups, and the downs, the inside track you love to follow, Behind the Mic.
Welcome to Behind the Mic number 26. Hi, Kelly.
Howdy! How are you?
I'm doing well. It's October 10th, 2025. And today we're going to be discussing our latest audiobook that we're waiting on its release. It should be out any day now. The Apostles of Eldon.
Book 9, World of Samar.
That's right, book 9.
The series will retire on, I'm sure of it.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you because you're going to host today.
I'm going to host today. Well, I just got back from Kansas City, which is where I'm from, Kansas City, Missouri. And I have to say, before we begin, that I went to 2 fantastic bookstores, independent bookstores in Kansas City. And that town is so cool. It has come so far. It's it's the same as Indianapolis. Indianapolis, these were like old cities, and they're old cities that have now regenerated themselves, right? When LA was a young city and brand new and doing all the weird things that LA is known for, and was the center of art and all that stuff, these other smaller Midwestern conservative towns were kind of in their small Midwestern conservative space. They've all rebuilt themselves, and I think you see that even more now. I felt that in Indianapolis when I went there to work for Indiana Rep, and I was there for like 2.5 months, 3 months, and I rode my bike all over that town, and it was right at the beginning of its regeneration. And now you see it whenever they show footage of the Indiana Fever, the WNBA team. You can just see how vital Indianapolis has become with this younger force of people right in the helm as mayor and city council people and all this stuff. They're investing the money really in a really interesting way to make the cities really exciting. Same thing has happened to Kansas City. I went to these 2 great bookstores, and without any ask from them, if you're ever in Kansas City, you've got to go to Wise Blood Books. It's a part of Westport Records. Super cool. And mostly a vinyl, like old school vinyl CDs, cassettes. I didn't see any 8-tracks, but it's mostly a music store. But in the corner, they melded with Wise Blood Books. Very small book section, but very impressive at the way it's been curated, and also excellent gifts in terms of like their candles and their journals and stuff like this. Just a really great, whoever's doing the buying for them and whoever is sort of spearheading where that bookstore goes. Very creative, very cool. I could have bought a ton of books. If that bookstore had been in LA, I would have bought a ton of books. But and then the second one is a old standard bookstore. It's been in Kansas City forever. It's called Prospero's. And you'll like that. It's named for the Shakespeare character from The Tempest.
Right.
3 floors jam-packed with vintage and used books. They had t-shirts. I forgot to bring my hat down. I was going to show you my hat. It's lavender corduroy. Can you believe that? It will be perfect with my hair. But just really cool bookstore. And I think they also have new, but the whole basement, I believe, is fantasy, and then really great nonfiction categories. And I knew about Prospero's before because a few years ago, I went to there's a national audio festival that's held in Kansas City every year, and they always do a Mark Twain celebration. And one year I was a part of the Mark Twain celebration. It's kind of interesting. They invite, I believe it's narrators, obviously, or anyone to submit and to do a reading of part of Mark Twain, right? And I was like looking at all this stuff and going, oh, I don't know, because of course Mark Twain is from Missouri, in case anybody doesn't remember that. And uh and I actually wound up reading, and it was fun because I cut it, I edited it, but I read the painting of the picket fence, the whitewashing of the picket fence from Tom
Oh,
Sawyer.
Tom Sawyer, yeah, yeah.
And I had read a lot of the essays and the short stories and the stuff like that, which are all great. But this just was so iconic, you know, and it was very fun and it was very well received. And anyway, and Prosperos hosted the Mark Twain event the year that I did it, so I knew of them. And but it's in a really cool little neighborhood, sort of Brookside adjacent, if you know anything about Kansas City. So that's a plug for two really super independent bookstores. And if you're ever in Kansas City, it's Westport Records, Wise Blood Books, and Prospero's Books, Kansas City, Missouri. Okay.
Um,
Apostles of Eldon. So this book was really interesting, right? We've gone through this saga. The first couple of books sort of set the tone. Emerald, the Talisman of Eldon, and the Heirs of Eldon.
yeah.
We got the generations before, and then we sort of lit into this generation of Shara and Talar and Tav and Tash, and we sat there for a good 5 or 6 books, maybe not that many, 3 or 4 books.
So,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So now we're journeying into sort of Talar adjacent,
yeah.
right? And although he's still with us, thank God. But this book, you and I both, so as we know from our other behind the mics, you haven't read these in a while, right? Because you've been busy writing new stuff.
Right.
And of course I'm reading them and recording them for the first time. This is my first experience. We both had sort of an interesting take on this book.
Yeah.
And we both had it at the same time. So I wanted you to tell our listeners more about, you were sort of frustrated with this book. You felt like you didn't do your due diligence. And I thought it would be really interesting, specifically from the writer's point of view, from the writer's POV, for you to talk about how you experienced this book as a part of your craft, the fact that you had written it, and then as you read it, your own critique of your writing.
Yeah, so this was an interesting one. This was a hard one for me. The subject matter is difficult. And it's I to kind of back up, I think you have to understand, when I wrote these books, all of these books were written in some form years and years before, starting when I was in high school. And I started all of these books. I was not very disciplined as a young writer. I would start these books, I'd get about 10, 15 chapters in, like halfway through the book, and then I just abandon it and I'd move on to the next one. And I kind of flitted back and forth. And then the thing that I talk about all the time, in 2010, I decided to get serious about my writing. And so I started reworking these books. I went back to these books and started with Emerald, and I started reworking these books, and I rewrote them dramatically. And Emerald is probably the one book that, you hear authors talk about writing for 10 years on one book. Well, that would be Emerald, because I just kept reworking Emerald and reworking Emerald, and setting up the world building and everything. As I got through these later ones, they were initially in better shape than the first books were, because I had changed a lot from the time I was, a teenager in high school to even being a college writer. I was a different writer. And so
Mhm.
these books were in some ways a little bit more fleshed out. They were a little bit better. But what I noticed with this one is that, and where I find it very frustrating, is that I spend a long time rewriting, editing, tightening the script, and I felt that this one wasn't quite as tight as some of my other ones. And that it probably would benefit from another editing to weed out some of that stuff. And so it felt um frustrating to me listening to it because I realized that I've learned so much in storytelling over these years and working with you. And that and I do want to preface this by saying I want to separate my critique of the writing from your performance of it, because that in no way reflects on your performance. Your performance, you took the material you had and you did an amazing job with it.
Thank
But I did find some frustration with this book, and I don't know whether part of it is it's a challenging topic. It's an uneasy topic. It's an uncomfortable topic. And I felt uncomfortable at times in listening to it. And maybe that's part of the nature of the subject matter, that it should make you feel uncomfortable. I don't know. But I do think that the book could have been tighter in places. And it's just it goes to the nature of this whole writing process, and how no matter how many books you write, no matter how long you've done it for, you can still hone your craft. You can always hone your craft and make it.
you.
And it's not to say that the book is a bad book. It's to
Mm-mm.
say that it doesn't meet the criteria that I personally expect of myself nowadays. Um, Looking back through the lens of what I've learned.
I think it's funny because, well, it's not funny, but it's interesting that so I'm reading it, right? And there's the reading of it, and then there's the recording of it. And those are sort of different hats that I wear, because I'm just, when I read something, I'm just a fan. I'm just a fangirl. I'm just like reading and I'm, oh my God, and and so like that. And I start to notice the intricacies when I'm recording, because in that role, yeah, I'm in the story and I'm the characters, but there's also a part of me that's removed,
Right.
that's, listening and paying very close attention and constantly thinking, how can we make this the very best experience that we can? And I think your criticism, while valid, I think you're a little too hard on yourself. I'm not so sure that everybody's gonna sense what you sense. What I got, and this is interesting because I run into this with some of the authors, a number of the authors that I work with in the content, right? Is that they're repetitive. They repeat stuff for
Yeah.
the sake of making sure that we got it
Yeah.
as readers. We got it,
Yeah.
and it's usually little details, and this is not you, this is somebody else who constantly repeats like a character's credentials, like if they're their job and where they are in the family and how many kids they have. And, it's like you tell us, and then you might hint at it, and then you don't have to tell us again. So
Yeah.
this just sometimes there was a
It
repetition
was.
of, yeah, almost like narrative or exposition.
Yeah.
Exposition.
Yeah. You nailed it. There absolutely was. And
But
that's part of my
not a,
thing.
yeah, but not a huge amount, just a little bit. And the thing that
Those come in, I think, so from a writer's perspective, those happen because when you are writing and you're in the midst of it, you wonder, well, did I say this enough? Right. So you add another one in. And the idea is eventually when you go back and you edit, if you edit well enough, you cut so many of those out, right? They leave that you put them on the cutting floor, right? And they don't go in there. And you hopefully have a more holistic view of the manuscript once you've completed it. And that's the part of it I think you nailed that frustrates me with this one, is that there was those things that should have been eliminated, those repetitions, the trust your reader, right? That's the trust your listener. Those things that should have been eliminated didn't get eliminated. And that is frustrating.
And that's the thing, is that as I was narrating it, not reading it, narrating it, I went, "This is weird for Michelle. This
Yeah.
is weird for ML to do this. This is weird.
Yeah.
This is unusual." And so, but I didn't say anything because who am I? And you said it to me, and it was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting." I think the thing that, and you mentioned, well, and I want to get your take on this, is I run with some independent authors. I think they cut their costs, right? I mean, they're publishing themselves, blah, blah, blah. And so they try to save money by not hiring an editor or not having a content editor and a proofreader. They think, okay, well, I'll proofread it, because I sometimes get these manuscripts and many times they're all ready for sale and they're a mess
Yeah.
in terms of proofreading.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be interesting for you. I mean, as a reader, as someone reading that seems very bush league to me.
Yeah. So because I teach writing courses, and when I teach writing courses, I always stress to my participants, um, if you have any money, where the money needs to be spent is on cover design and editing. Those are the two places, not, other things you can do yourself. You can design your own website, whatever, because the websites are so easy now, to put together and to put together
Absolutely.
looks well because they have the templates and stuff. But where you need to spend the money is on cover design and editing. And the editing part of this, I surprised at how many people think that they can run it through Pro Writer or one of those online editing things. They're not going to pick up the things you and I are talking about. An editor is. And I have gotten so lucky. So as I've gotten more um what's the word I'm looking for? My profitability has increased. I've been able to hire an editor. And Monique is amazing because she will actually say to me, "You said this on page 23. You don't need to say it again here." And that's such an invaluable thing for, like, yes, she catches all of my stupid, which I make such stupid errors, and I'm always dropping off the eds or the ings on verbs. It's and Pro Writing Aid can catch those things. What she catches are the inconsistencies where I've said something. The latest book I'm editing right now, she caught that I had said two characters were the same height, and then I went in and I said one was 5'6" and one was 5'8" or 5'9" or something, and she caught those things. And those are the things that are invaluable. And anytime anybody like you send me, which I'm so grateful for, where I've made other stupid mistakes, because no matter how many times you read a manuscript, your brain fixes things and you can't catch them all. You send me the errors that you catch, and then it goes through her again. So I try and get as many eyes on it now as I did. When those books were written, I didn't have the luxury, I didn't have the finances to be able to hire an editor. And so a lot of the editing fell to family friends and stuff like that who were not good at catching those things, those repetitions. That wasn't something that they were looking for. They were looking for the big errors, and even then they missed those. So yeah.
I think it's important too to be specific about, there's content editing,
Mhm.
which is repetitions and,
Yes. Yes.
inconsistencies. And then there's proofreading,
Right.
which is right, just like basic,
Yeah.
basic spelling of words.
Are all the I's dotted and the T's crossed? Yeah.
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 But the
Yeah.
content
And
part,
both of those, and can you find an editor that does both, or is that two different editors?
I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, it would be two different editors because that would give you two different eyes on the document. Most authors, even best-selling authors, can't afford to do that. And so often, if you can find, which I have that in Monique, she's amazing. She catches all of the things. And she jokes because she says she's obsessive, compulsive about it, but she'll catch things where I had dates mixed up and she caught that, so
That's good.
ideally find a really good editor. You could find one that could do all those things for you, but no, in a perfect world, if you had money, you would hire two different editors.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because I think it's essential. I think it's not something you can short shrift
No.
with your work, and it's not, as you said, it's not the place to save money. Now, you also mentioned that this is a very serious subject, and it is a very serious subject. As I was recording um, it was hard to record,
Yeah.
and I mean, it was hard to speak,
Yeah.
and and it continues in the vein of the topic of slavery from followers of Eldon. And, so it's more on that, but on this, we get more into the idea of the violence against women.
Yeah.
And, uh, I I wanted to congratulate you is the wrong thing, but to speak to the fact that I feel like personally, there's a lot of stuff in the entertainment world that sensationalizes violence against women,
Hmm.
um, for the sake of sensationalism,
Yeah.
you know, not because they're trying to solve the problem, not because they're objectifying women and violence against them. And in my mind, I believe they're encouraging violence against women. Not to say they are knowingly and actively encouraging violence against women, but I think just like we think violence in our video games and our movies is encouraging or giving permission for people to do it in real life, to be violent and increases the violence. I think it increases the violence against, specifically against women, to
Yeah.
see it constantly repeated. I have kind of a problem with Law and Order SUV. It's I think it started out as a show that was trying to make a statement possibly, and I think they've gotten really far away from that, and it I had to stop watching it.
Yeah.
As much as I like Mariska Hargitay, I just couldn't keep watching that over and over and over again,
Yeah.
and, so I congratulate you because the only reason it's in this book is to defeat it, stop it, demonize it, um, and defend women who are victims of it and champion the women and men who put a stop to it. I also think that the way you presented it was not in the least bit sensational. You managed to communicate the terror of it without turning it into a blow by blow, you know, just without making it sensational, without making it
Yeah. Yeah.
titillating.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, my words are not with me because I have um, I think that women are in trouble. I think, with and I mean, I doubt that I'm the only person that feels that way, but it makes me sad to look at the role models that our young women today are turning to. And these are wonderfully talented, gifted women who could present a different face and a different figure for these young women to look up to, a different, overall image. And they're still saying, I believe they're still saying to young women in our world that we're only worth our sex. we're only worth what we can do as female sex objects. And, um, and I know that it's all about freedom and do what you want, and wear what you want, and be what you want, and all that. And that's good, but let's vary the image instead of it always being about, and I mean, and when I was younger and maybe different hormones were charging through my body and stuff, I wore stuff cut up to here and cut down to there. And, I was looking to send a particular message at a particular time, but I didn't always send that message. And I just feel like young women are getting beat over the head with it. And when I go into schools or past schools or see schools, I think about my own granddaughter. I see young women, who look like what they're seeing on television and movies and, YouTube. And it makes me sad that they're not emulating, that they don't have other role models to emulate.
It's a minefield, isn't it? Yeah. It's
Mm.
it's that, yeah, how do you balance with body positivity and accepting who you are and being able to be a sexual being without making that your entire identity?
I
It's
just talked for 5 minutes and you just summed it up in one statement.
it's hard, and as you said, we both have granddaughters, and I worry about, yeah, I worry. I have a grandson now, and I don't have the same fears for him that I do for my granddaughters, in this book, it was hard because there are some, the dehumanization of everyone involved in sexual violence and in enslaving other people. Everyone who it touches it is dehumanized, even the people that think that they are in power and are perpetuating it. And I think, there's the obvious, right? There's a very difficult to write scene, of almost rape, in the book, that we've seen. We know the perpetrators. They are very obviously vile, low down, bottom, dwellers of society. But then there's the institutionalized violence against women that is represented by the Nazarian. And that part of it to me is almost as, well, it is as vile and but in some ways almost even worse, because they are taking this high road, thinking that because they have ritualized it, because they have made it a part of their cultural dynamics, that somehow that makes it acceptable. And that part of it was hard for me. The final scene where Ariane confronts her abuser, um, you know, was as important as what happened in the attempted rape, because that standing up, that calling, putting a mirror to it, and the way that the other men who were involved in that organization kind of walked away, even though they were uncomfortable, even though they felt it was wrong, even though they were sickened by it, they walked away, they turned away, they didn't take a stand. And that to me is as reprehensible, as disgusting as the other part of it. And unfortunately, we have that today in our society, right? We do even today have this ritualized um degradation of women and violence against women, that is acceptable because it's couched under a cultural norm or whatever we want to call it.
I mean, it's an interesting, the book and all those topics, the slavery, the institutionalized degradation of women, and the violence against women are absolutely a reflection of things we're seeing
Mhm.
in our contemporary society. And the part that's scary, as I was thinking about, I did a lot of work, creating assisting two wonderful women in creating an anti-bullying and it's a social and emotional learning program for kids and teachers, called Manadoob. And, and just the idea that if you don't say something, if you see it and you turn away, you're as much a part of the problem as the problem.
Yes.
And that today in our contemporary society, more and more people are becoming afraid to speak up because of what's happening
Yeah.
to civil rights
Yeah.
and the degradation of civil rights. It's alarming. And
It's and the thing is that, and I know this isn't directly related, but there's still, I think we're at an inflection point. We're at a tipping point where something has to give, something has to break. We had an incident that happened here in Sacramento last week. I don't know if you heard about it, where the helicopter left we have UC Davis is a trauma center, and they have helicopter. I used to work out there, and we used to see the helicopters landing all the time, bringing in patients. And the helicopter left, and it crashed onto the freeway, and three people were trapped inside. And it brought the whole trap. I mean, it's, if you've seen the videos of it, it's just horrific. And they were trapped. There was a nurse, paramedic, and the pilot, and it crashed on the freeway, and all the cars stopped on the freeway. But the thing about it was, the people got out of their cars, they ran to the helicopter. When the emergency when the emergency service got on scene, they couldn't get the people out because the helicopter was laying on one of the people. The people surrounded the helicopter, these just everyday people on the street surrounded the helicopter, and they pushed the helicopter up. They lifted it themselves so that the emergency service could get in there and remove the people from the helicopter. At this point, all three were in critical condition. The one that was trapped under the helicopter, I haven't heard any updates yet, but they all initially survived. I don't know what's happening now, but what I'm trying to say in this long about story is that I do believe there are more people who want change, who want this to not be the way we're going, who want this to not be an acceptable form for our daughters and our granddaughters, etc. And I think that at some point, when there's the to extend this metaphor on, when the helicopter of modern society comes crashing down, I pray that people will run to lift it off and pull everybody out and change the trajectory of where we're going. Because I feel we're reaching that inflection point. It can't continue on, otherwise society will collapse.
you know, I think it was in the 70s, it might have been the late 60s, but and it may have denoted an entirely different group of people, but it was called the silent majority.
Yes.
And again, that might not be the correct reference for what you're talking about, but it is absolutely the right title.
Mhm.
And I agree 100% with you. I think the average person out there, it doesn't like what's happening
Right.
and doesn't feel safe, doesn't
Yes.
want what they're seeing. And I'm with you. I believe that they will come forward and help lift the helicopter. That being said, I've been on an airplane 3 times in the last 3 months. And even though I was not anywhere near the first person on the plane, I could sit in the exit aisle every single trip because nobody wants to sit in the exit aisle anymore because of all the crazy stuff that's been happening on airplanes. They don't want to be responsible to have to help.
Ah,
And that's, the flight attendant was talking about that. And it's I mean, and you used to, remember that when you never could be in the exit aisle, You can
Yeah.
never get a seat in the exit aisle because yeah, so yeah.
Ah,
Amy Mc Amy McGrath is running again in Kentucky for the US Senate. Go Amy. So I think, yeah, I think it would also be interesting for us to talk about Bouchercon,
okay.
post Bouchercon. What'd you think? So tell us what Bouchercon is in case anybody didn't watch the last episode.
Right.
Uh,
Con is the one of the biggest mystery conventions every year. It goes to a different city each year. And this year it was in New Orleans. And Kelly and I went, we attended
we had a great time in New Orleans.
had a great time in New Orleans. Yes.
Hashtag lady on the plane.
Yes. But what's unique about Bouchercon is it's where writers and readers come together and go attend the convention side by side. And so we went to, I think, did we go to two panels, three panels? One we walked out of.
Yeah. I think we went to 3 or 4 panels. Well, you spoke at one. You were a member of a panel.
Yeah.
And then we went to one that was really wonderful. And we went to one that was about uh what's the criminal stuff, the criminal procedure,
Oh, that's right. We did. Yes. Yes.
and that was
For-
sort of interesting.
the friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was,
Forensics.
yes.
And then we went to one on audiobooks
Yeah.
and where the state of I can't even I think it was so you wanna let's talk audiobooks, I think it was called. And so I guess they did kind of talk audiobooks, but that was the one we walked out of.
Yeah.
And you say why?
So to be to preface this, to be fair, I can absolutely imagine it is very difficult. The challenge that BoucherCon has put forward to bring panels that are interesting to both readers and writers, that is a astronomical job. That is an astronomical goal. And so I can imagine that not every panel is going to hit you know, the way that people might want them to, because that's a big ask. That's a big ask to try and meld those two things together. What we found, or let me speak from myself, sorry. What I found with the audiobook one is the focus was on big production. Um, they seem to believe that the future of audiobooks was to move to big production, multiple voice productions that would be extraordinarily, and you can correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, or your takeaways from it, but would be extraordinarily expensive for independent authors to be able to produce. And therefore, they would not be able to keep up with the big production authors that have huge publishing houses behind them, and that the rest of the authors would wind up, I guess, I don't know that they ever got to that conclusion. I don't know what the conclusion was, but that the future of audiobooks was to go to big production numbers, like a listening movie in your head, and that anyone who wasn't on board with that would be left by the wayside. And I don't know whether that fits your take on it. So I'll let you.
I would have to agree. They were talking about special effects and big explosions
Yeah.
um and just like big production. And the thing that was the most there were two aspects to it that I thought were really interesting. Since this was a convention largely directed toward independent authors and fans of independent authors or small publishers. Um and yet no one on that panel was an independent narrator
Right.
or an independent producer. They all came from the big publishers.
Yes.
And I take that back. One guy was an independent producer, but he had been a narrator through the big publishers. He wasn't an independent narrator, and you don't become you don't start producing audio you don't start strictly producing audiobooks if you're making enough money as a narrator.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe he just really wanted to expand his profitability, but um you know, ugh, they the people that are actually recording audiobooks were not the people on the panel. And it was and then the other part of it was that in order to support this idea, and I do think the big publishers are moving towards multiple voices because they're getting so much competition from independent narrators and independent producers like myself. I mean, you don't have to get published by one of the big three publishers in order to have an audiobook anymore.
Right.
Not by the furthest stretch of the imagination. So they are trying to diversify by having multiple voice. But they were talking about, in order to do that, abridging the book,
Yes, that's right.
cutting the material. And it's like, wait a minute. This is supposed to be an industry that serves the writer. This is supposed to be an industry that serves the book, not taking the book and making it serve the production and the performance,
Yeah.
right? It's a service
I
industry.
forgot about them talking about appending the book. Yeah.
And they were talking about it like, oh yeah, well, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what we do. Like, it's just like you should you should feel so privileged.
That was it. That was the
Just
tone. The tone
yeah.
was, aren't you lucky you get to sit here and let us tell you what you're going to listen to, tell you what you're going to enjoy. And to me, there was a disconnect. Um, and I I watch a movie to watch a movie. That's a experience that I have with a movie. Listen to an audiobook to listen to a book. They are not the same thing. And when I'm in the mood for a movie, I don't want to listen to an audiobook. Conversely, when I'm in the mood for an audiobook, I don't want a movie in my head.
And that's a quote from what they said.
Yes.
That they want to put their ideas that it should be a movie in your head,
Yes.
a movie in your ears. And it just seemed wrong. It just seemed wrong, wrong, wrong.
And I think short-sighted. I think what they're not understanding, they don't understand the nature of people who listen to audiobooks. The people, it's like you said, the people who listen to audiobooks do not want it appended, do not want the author's words adulterated. They want to hear the book because they're driving in the car, or they're on a hike, or they're washing dishes, or they're vision impaired and they can no longer read a book. They don't want a movie experience. That's not what they're looking for. They want a book experience, and they're missing what an audiobook does. So, to kind of wrap this up with a bow, is that there were parts of the convention that were well done. Were parts of it that missed. And I think that would probably be true of any convention. Um, I personally think that the panel that I was on was a miss because I think there was no substance to it.
Although I thought the mediator was quite good.
The mediator was very good. And the people were the participants were interesting. I would have liked to have a different topic, something that would have gotten to the heart of why cozy mysteries are so popular. That probably would have been a better, more interesting topic. Unfortunately, we were given the topic. We didn't have the choice of the topic. So, you work with what you can. And it felt like it was very much a frivolous fluff panel, which I think could have been with the people that were on the panel. There were some very interesting people on the panel. I think it could have been better. But again, I can imagine, I can understand the difficulty of trying to bridge two very different divides. Uh,
I think they could benefit the convention. So my first time, right? And I sort of, I guess, um, you made the point also that I think they could benefit from, and I haven't filled out my survey yet, so this is good. This is bringing forward in my mind. There was only one panel on audiobooks, and I think they're missing a bet there. I think a lot more people listen to audiobooks than they are paying attention to. And which says to me that maybe they could use some fresh blood in terms of their creative decision making. The thing went off. It was scheduled well. It
yes.
was all of the special events were there. The hotel
Yeah.
that they interfaced with the hotel really well. Technically, it went very well. But in terms of the actual creativity, I think they're working from a template, an old template, and they could use some fresh ideas and fresh blood there in terms of what their panels, what the content of their panels are, who they're allowing on their panels. And also, it seemed a very archaic attitude. There was like primarily independent or small publisher authors, right? Was who this was geared towards. It's like if you've been published, you are the royalty. And if you're just an independent author putting your own books on Amazon, you are sort of the chicken scratching in the dirt kind of thing, right? And you haven't arrived yet. You're still a novice. You still don't really know what you're doing,
Oh, good.
which
That, yes.
and it again says to me, they do not, and from people we talk to, authors we talk to, who are published authors, whose books are not selling, who are, getting upside down on their contracts with their publishers because their publisher isn't doing anything for them to sell their books. I mean, I talk to so many people. I spent a lot of time at panels that were about social media, marketing, stuff like that. And when I told them, when I was, it was sort of, so where are you in your development, And mostly it was people, oh man, I just don't know what to do on Instagram. And, when we talk to people, when I talk to people representing us, because we were there together and presented ourselves as a team,
Right.
as a collaboration. And I was like, we're here and we're curious at if we honed our skills in marketing, if we could go from here to here. And they were like, you're here?
We had that interesting conversation with this lovely, lovely woman. And I'm not going to name names, but just this lovely woman. We were talking to her after one of the panels, and she was talking about how she was traditionally published and her publisher was this. And she was very excited about her publisher and telling us about how the next book was coming out and gave us some swag and was going on and on about how wonderful it was that they were invested in her and they had been invested with her for I think 5 years or 7 years. I can't remember what the number was. And so she said, asked you what you were doing there. And you said, well, I'm here because I'm her audiobook producer. And she says, oh yeah, my publisher is not publishing audiobooks now because they don't think that the market is there for audiobooks. And we said, well, that's not really true. And she said, well, how many how many audiobooks have you sold? And we said we at that point we had sold 60,000. And we said, well, we've sold 60,000. And she went, and then her demeanor
She swallowed her tongue.
completely changed. And she told us, if you remember, that she is not selling any books. Her publisher is not getting the books to market, is not marketing the books, is not pushing the books. She has not made any royalties whatsoever. And it was such a dramatic shift in her attitude that it was shocking because she was with a fairly good sized publisher, and she was receiving no royalties at all after a 7-year contract. And um yes, and that was the tone. You are so right. That was the tone for the whole. There was tears, right?
Yeah.
There was the tier was the published authors from a trad publishing house, right? I mean, they were the cat's meow. They were clearly up here, and then you had the independent publishers, or the small press publishers were a little bit higher, and then you had the independent publishers, and they were definitely sort of the third tier. And the funny thing is that the reality, what was being billed as this is what you want to attain versus what reality was disconnected, was such a disconnect. And this has been a problem with the industry for so 15 years. The disrespect, the absolute, you and I had a long conversation about this, the absolute disrespect for independent publishing, for independent movie making, for independent music production, it has never stopped. And yet those are the people that are making money. Those are the people that are actually, it's so ironic. And we talked about it. And I said, what I hear when I hear this, that these people are better because they are traditionally published, is fear. I hear fear. And I'm going to keep saying this thing because maybe it will be true if I keep saying this.
I think it's also a certain degree of, well, it's what you say. I wish it were true. And I'm going to translate that into laziness because they want it to be true that their publisher will push their book. They want it to be true. It's kind of like actors and agents. You want it to be true that your agent is working for you, that, they're out there beating the bushes for roles that are perfect for you. And that, as an author, you want it to be true that your publisher is, trying to get you on talk shows and trying to get you on interviews and trying to get your book in, festivals and blah, 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 blah. When the reality is, and they don't, if it's not true, then that means the alternative is for them to do the work themselves,
Yeah.
like you do and like we do, is to get out there and maximize zero budget opportunities like social media, generate YouTube talk shows like we're doing right here with Behind the Mic, which is soon to be a podcast. Thank you very much. And I've probably been saying that for years, but we are going to do it. We are. And we're going to start another new podcast, which I can't remember what we're gonna call it, but let's just tease it on that level.
Okay.
And because of what we learned at Bouchercon, I do wanna encourage any and all of our listeners, come join us on Instagram. Right now, my Instagram is Storyteller Productions, and your Instagram is author ML Hamilton, is that correct? And, come see, we're stepping up our game
Yeah.
and having a lot of I'm having fun doing it strangely.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot it's stuff we learned at BoucherCon from, it's kind of a cool thing online, Outliers University. I do wanna say that that was a part of BoucherCon. Outliers University is an online, writer support
Yeah.
kind of place, and I guess they do all kinds of
And I
things.
feel the bias there.
No, not at all, not at all.
No.
There were people from all levels of and treated with equality,
And
and
yet they were willing to listen.
yeah,
They were
yeah.
willing to hear our experience, which was,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, and yeah, yeah, it was interesting. I went to Boucher kind of expecting to get help, right? To meet people who were interested in answering questions and who didn't have their own agenda. And what I got was everybody had their own agenda, and it was mostly about networking.
yeah,
And, okay, now I know. And, because I was like, I thought it was gonna be, and then my friend said, she goes to a lot of these conventions because she interprets. She's there for people who speak other languages and interprets for them. And, she's like, and goes to interpreter conventions and, stuff like that. And she goes, "It does seem mostly to just be about networking."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And it's like, "Okay, so why don't you just present it as that and gear it towards that and networking, right? Connecting instead of making kind of pretending to make it about." But I guess that's the part where it comes in for the readers and the listeners, the fans, as opposed to the
And I
professionals.
think for I mean, we only attended 4 of the panels. So, but I had heard from other people that there were some, one of my, um, colleagues here in Sacramento was here, and we never ran into each other. Ironically, that's how big it was.
Yeah.
And she was there, and we were kind of trading stories back and forth on Facebook, and I realized she had attended some other panels that she found very beneficial to her. So, we had to be fair to Bouchercon, we also had an ulterior motive for going.
Speaking of agendas.
Yes, we definitely had our own agenda, and it was New Orleans. And so we didn't fully immerse ourselves in the convention. I never had intended to fully immerse myself in the convention. That was always never the goal. The goal was to do research on New Orleans for another book. And so
And which series is that?
for the Peyton Brooks series. And so, we did have definitely a different agenda.
We had so much fun.
We did. And exploring that city for 5 days was just amazing. And I think about how much we did, and I think about how much more we could have done. And so if you're planning to go to New Orleans, 5 days, it really isn't enough.
Visit our Facebook and or our Instagram, and you'll see pictures of all the places we went. We ate great food. You'll see what those restaurants are. It just great. We had the best time. And it was like maybe the third time we've ever been in the same
Yeah.
uh square footage together, live and in person together, and we had a great time. We were exhausted by the time it was over.
Yeah. No, I was thinking of we so at the hotel, beautiful hotel, had a rooftop pool, and we used that pool so much. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking how I enjoyed our morning swims, and then we usually swim at night before going to bed. And it just how fun it was to partake of everything that hotel had to offer. Definitely would recommend it.
And we're looking forward to there was a silent auction
Yeah.
and we gave away a nosh with a narrator, which the winning person is part of a book club.
Yes.
And as we've talked about doing this, Nosh with the narrator was just basically they got a Starbucks gift card and then a Zoom with me to talk about audiobooks. They asked me if I would attend their book club, 80% of which are audiobook. They listen to the audiobook, the other 20% read the book. And I said, well, and they decided to pick an ML Hamilton book. And so now the author is going to attend the book club as well. So keep that in mind. If you have a book club, we would love to visit with your club. And if you want to select, and we're helping their book club with copies of the audiobook, which we can easily do. So if you're in a book club and you hear this and you'd like to listen and read one of our books, give us
Give us
give
a
us a yeah, I think we have contact information in the end of
have
this,
it on
don't we?
my website. It's on Instagram. They can direct message us on both of us on Instagram, Facebook. We're both on Blue Sky.
Yep.
And I am also on Threads now, so I've been exploring Threads. Um, and so any of those, and you can contact us on the website. There is a link to all of those, and you can contact us. And if you contact me, I'll get in touch with Kelly. And if you contact Kelly, she'll get in touch with me, and we can arrange that. And show up at your book club and talk books and audiobooks. And it doesn't just have to be about our books. We're open to talking about anything. So
If you're watching this on my YouTube or on ML's YouTube, we'll put contact information down at the bottom in the comment section,
yeah,
and you can reach out that way too, so it's right there for you.
sounds good.
Good meeting.
Yeah. All right. So let's preview some of the things that are coming up. So we do know we're going to start another um podcast, and we're not going to give a lot. We'll tease it a little bit more with our next book. But it's not going to be necessarily book related. It's going to be life related. And so we'll be doing that. And then we have
What's our next book?
so we have the Christmas Mystery is coming up. That will be available for all of our listeners to pre-order. We're playing around with maybe doing a pre-order for the audiobook. We're not sure we're gonna get that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but we're not sure we're gonna get that ready this time. But we're playing with maybe doing a pre-order for the audiobook, but we'll definitely have pre-order for the ebook. And then the
Cyber Monday.
it will release Cyber Monday, exactly. And then we have The Last Zion Sawyer. I did get, just so that, because I'm starting to get the emails, I got an email from somebody asking me not to end Zion. But what they need to understand is that you're still going to, Zion will be ending. This is our last book, Cafe Amarato. And is that right?
I think so, yeah.
And we'll end the series, but there will be a new series set in Sequoia with our same cast of crazy characters. But Zephyr will be fronting that one. So if you are a Zion Sawyer fan, please do not think that you're leaving Sequoia forever. We will be back in Sequoia again. Because I'm starting to get the emails. And then that will round out our year.
Well, and along with that, we're releasing Apostles, and that means we'll be able to release the box set, the third box set in World of Samar with book 8, 9, and 10.
Exactly.
And so that fans can get that box set and then go right 8, 9, and 10. No,
No,
7,
7 and
6, 7, and 8.
yeah,
6, 7, and 8.
yeah,
And then once they listen to the box set, they'll be able to go right into 9
yes.
as we record book 10 at the beginning of next year. And the new podcast will probably come out the beginning of next year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We've got a lot going on, and coming into the holiday season too. So if you're looking for gifts for your family members, an audiobook, you can gift audiobooks on Audible, and that might
And
be something to think about doing.
or visit ML Hamilton's website for her wonderful gift boxes and baskets for your favorite series, your favorite character, or the Candlelight Letter series, which we've never really talked about. It's a mystery that comes to you one letter a month
Right.
for a year.
Yeah.
And with little special inclusions. So a lot going on, lot going on.
Yeah. So you could do all your holiday shopping with us. All right. Well, this has been Behind the Mic number 26. Can you believe that? Yeah. Today we discussed Apostles of Eldon and did a wrap on our trip to Bouchercon and previewed what's coming up next. So thank you, Kelly.
You bet. My pleasure.
See you all soon.
Thank you for joining us for Hamilton and Hazen Behind the Mic. Visit authormlhamilton.net and kellyhazennarrates.com to join our newsletters for more insider news and views. Today's episode is sponsored by Phoenix Publication Services. PPS, Digital Shepherds. Let us ignite your writing goals.